The trip to Azura Heaven was supposed to be simple. 3 women, 1 island, a few days away from the noise of life. Nothing more. But sometimes, the places we travel to do not change us. They simply reveal what was already inside us. The morning of the trip arrived with excitement. Nadia woke before sunrise. Her suitcase had already been packed the night before, but she still checked something again. Blue dress, swimsuit, sunglasses, sandals, everything was perfect. Her phone buzzed. Airport in 1 hour, Lila said. Don't be late. Nadia smiled and Nadia said, please, I am always on time for luxury. Then another message appeared. Amara said, I brought snacks. Nadia laughed out loud. Of course you did, she whispered. Amara had always been the prepared one. Rivergate International Airport was busy as always. People rushed in every direction, rolling suitcases, flight announcements, coffee cups. But when the 3 women finally met near the boarding gates, everything felt calm again. Nadia hugged Lila first, then Amara. It is finally happening, Nadia said. Yes, Amara replied with a soft smile. Lila looked around the airport. 3 days of peace, she said. No work, no drama, no men. Nadia raised her hand dramatically. Best rule ever. They laughed. At that moment, everything felt right. The flight to Azura Heaven was only 3 hours. They spent most of it talking. Old memories returned easily. The tiny apartment Amara was to live in. The terrible cafe job Nadia used to explain about every night. The first time Lila joined them for a movie. Remember that terrible horror movie? Nadia said. The one where the ghosts looked like a plastic doll. Lila laughed. I couldn't sleep for 2 nights. Amara shook her head. You weren't scared, you were dramatic. I was scared, Lila insisted. Their laughter filled the small airplane room. Nearby passengers smiled quietly. The energy between the 3 women was warm and familiar, like home. When the plane landed, the air felt different. Warm, clean. The scent of the ocean filled the breeze. Azura Heaven looked exactly like the pictures. White sand beaches stretched along the coast. Tall palm trees swayed gently in the wind. Small luxury villas stood peacefully between gardens and stone paths. Everything looked calm, quiet, private. A resort employee welcomed them with a friendly smile. Welcome to Azura Heaven, he said. He handed each of them a cold drink made with tropical fruit. Lila took a sip and closed her eyes. This is heaven, she said. Nadia laughed. See, I told you this trip would be legendary. Amara looked around quietly. For the first time in months, her shoulder relaxed. Their villa sat near the edge of the island. It overlooked the ocean. Large windows allowed sunlight to fill every room. The living room opened directly to a private pool. Soft white curtains moved gently in the breeze. 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a wooden dining table on the trance. Everything felt peaceful. The staff carried their luggages inside. Nadia immediately ran towards the pool. I claimed this side of the villa, she announced. Lila walked into the trance and looked at the ocean. The water was so clear that she could see small fish swimming near the shore. Amara stood quietly near the window. For a moment, she simply breathed. The island felt like a reset button. They spent the few hours exploring, barefoot walk along the beach, photos near the water, laughter as they tested the pool. Nadia insisted on taking dozens of pictures. Memories are important, she said. Lila rolled her eyes. You mean social media is important? Nadia pretended to be offended. How dare you? Amara laughed quietly. For the first time in weeks, she felt light. That evening, they went to the island main restaurant. The restaurant sat near the beach. Lantern glows softly above wooden tables. The sound of waves created a peaceful background. They ordered seafood, fruit drink, and desserts. The conversation flowed naturally. Travel plans, work stories, funny memories, everything felt like old things. But then something small happened, something almost invisible. Lila's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then placed the phone back on the table. A minute later, it buzzed again. And again, Nadia noticed. Are you good? She asked casually. Lila smiled quickly. Yeah, just work. Amara raised an eyebrow slightly but said nothing. They had an unspoken rule. Respect space, respect privacy. So no one pushed the question, but the phone kept vibrating. Later that night, after dinner, they returned to their villa. The moon reflected softly on the ocean. The air felt cool and peaceful. Inside the living room, they opened a bottle of wine. Music played quietly from Nina's speaker. Everything seemed relaxed again until Amara's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her expression changed slightly. I will take this outside, she said. She stepped through the glass door and stood on the trance. Her voice was low, serious. From inside the room, Nadia and Lila could not hear the conversation clearly, but they could see her body language. Her shoulders were tense. Her voice sounded urgent. The call lasted several minutes. When Amara came back inside, she forced a smile. Everything okay? Lila asked. Amara nodded. Yes, just something from work, but Nadia noticed something strange. Amara avoided eye contact, and her smile looked practiced. Still, Nadia said nothing. The next morning began beautifully. Bright sunlight filled the villa. Birds sang outside. The ocean shimmered like glasses. They had breakfast by the pool. Fresh fruit, warm bread, coffee. For a moment, the tension from the previous night seems to disappear. They laughed again, talked about swimming, planned a boat ride later in the afternoon. The island walked like magic. It slowed everything down. It softened their stress. But peace is sometimes fragile, and sometimes the truth reveals faster than we expect. They were lying beside the pool when Nadia heard a voice. Nadia, her body froze. She turned slowly. Standing near the trance of the villa was a man wearing sunglasses, confident, relaxed. Too relaxed. It was Marcus, Nadia's boyfriend. The world seemed to pause for a moment. Amara sat up slowly. Nadia looked confused. What are you doing here? Nadia asked. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Marcus smiled as if everything was normal. I had meeting nearby, he said casually. I thought I'd surprise you. The silence that followed felt heavy. Nadia stood up slowly. We said no, man, she said. Marcus lifted his hand playfully. I won't stay long. I just wanted to see you. He said the word like a gift. But Nadia didn't smile. Lila looked at Amara. Amara looked down at the table. Something about the moment felt wrong. Marcus stayed longer than expected. He asked questions about their plans, about the island, about the trip. But the question felt less like curiosity and more like inspection. Nadia answered politely, but her energy changed. She became quieter, more guided. Finally, Marcus left. But the air in the villa felt different, heavier. Later that evening, the tension returned. Amara's phone rang again. She answered without checking the screen. Hello, a woman's voice spoke loudly enough that everyone heard it. Are you with him now? Amara's face turned pale. What? She whispered. The voice continued. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Amara ended the call quickly. The room became silent. Lila stared at her. Nadia crossed her arms. Wrong number, Nadia asked carefully. Amara forced a smile. Yes, just a wrong number. But nobody believed it. Later that night, Lila sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. A message appeared from Nathan, her boyfriend. The message was long, very long. Where are you now? Who are you with? Send me pictures. Do you eat dinner? Don't forget to check in before you sleep. Lila stared at the screen. Her chest felt tight. Nadia noticed. Everything okay? Lila hesitated. Then she nodded. Yes, but something inside her felt uneasy. For the first time, she noticed something strange. Nathan always needed updates, always needed information, always needed reassurance, and suddenly it felt like pressure. Late that night, the villa finally became quiet. The ocean waves were the only sound. Lila searched her bag for her phone charger. Her hand touched something unexpected. An envelope. She pulled it out. It was one of the Valentine's letters. The sealed letter they brought with them. But something was wrong. The edges of the letter were slightly torn. Lila frowned. That is strange, she murmured. She turned the envelope over. It was addressed in neat writing for Nadia and Lila from Amara. Lila stared at it. Her heart began beating fast. The seal was already damaged, maybe during packing, maybe by accident. She told herself she would only check whose letter it was. Just one quick look, nothing more. She carefully opened the envelope. Her eyes scanned the first line, then the second, then the third. Her breathing stopped. It was not a letter about love. It was about silence, about knowing something terrible and choosing not to say it. The word shook her. One sentence stood out clearly. Sometimes protecting the circle means protecting someone who does not deserve it. Lila's hand trembled. She slowly folded the letter again. Her mind raced with questions. What did Amara know? Who was she protecting? And why had she stayed silent? Outside, the island looked peaceful. The ocean wave continued calmly. The moon shone brightly over the water. But inside the villa, something invisible had begun to break. The circle had always been strong, but truth has strange powers. Once it began to surface, it cannot return to silence.